Hey everybody, Dr. Rob here. Hope you're having a great day, Friday. A little murky outside. Back to in-home conversation. I'm excited to, as always, share some daily information. I think that as the pandemic continues and we're seeing these spikes up and down, a lot of people are asking a lot of questions. And again, the biggest question is what's going on and who do you trust? So I try and tell everybody, try and trust me. I am going through all the literature. I'm speaking to all the people on the front lines. I speak to a lot of docs in other states. And I want to give you the most leading edge information so you can decide what you think is most important and what's most valuable to you. Today's topic, which I want to share with you, is very interesting in that COVID-19's effect on brain health, and does COVID-19 damage the brain? We've talked about COVID-19 being a respiratory issue, and it is. It has a respiratory component. What we're finding out is it has a huge, large central nervous system component to it. And nobody's better to talk central nervous system than somebody with a chiropractic background. Of course, I have a chiropractic background, and you're chiropractors. So some scientists really thought that it was a respiratory failure that caused the death. I've got my notes here. Respiratory failure through the death, through the lungs, but they did not look at the brain. They're starting to realize the brain makes a very large component. They did a study of they did what they call a composite of 300 studies, and they found the prevalence of neurological abnormalities in COVID-19 patients. So here's some of the abnormalities. Here are some of the symptoms that are attributed strongly to a central nervous system compromise. Headaches, loss of smell. Interesting with the smell and taste, it's over 30% of people already. That may be your first line. If you're losing your smell and your taste, you may have COVID-19. Again, we'll back it up with the headaches, tingling sensation, an inability to speak, and people are having strokes. We're going to go through why, and seizures to this. Approximately 50% of the people that were not only tested positive for COVID, but in the different studies were also shown to have a neurological component. That's 1 in 2. So when you think about it, there was an interesting Facebook when we talk about COVID-19. When you want to compare and contrast with other viruses, number one, as we all know, viruses need to be activated. They're not live. They're either inactive or active. They become active when they join us. They actually do attack the central nervous system. This should not be a real surprise to us. Adding to that, with the idea of the central nervous system, is, for me, that conversation, comparing and contrasting it to, let's look at chickenpox. Everybody's had the chickenpox. Who likes the chickenpox? Yuck, that little brown thing that you had on you. But chickenpox lays dormant in the central nervous system for a period of time, but when it rears its ugly head as an adult, it's called shingles. 1/3 of Americans suffer from shingles. I, fortunately, to date, have not had the shingles. I am not looking for it. I've seen people with shingles. As a chiropractor, we see people presenting with that dermatomal pain pattern, and they are in tremendous pain. Their pain thresholds are typically good, but they are giving way to the compromised pain. Another type of virus affecting the central nervous system is herpes. We've all talked about it. One of my teenagers came in and said, yeah, herpes, luggage for life because you carry it with you the whole time. Interesting. So herpes, we all know there's different herpes. Again, herpes is the perfect virus. It lies in your central nervous system and picks and chooses every so often to rear its ugly head. HIV, that's a virus too. High mortality rate. That's changed somewhat over the last decade or two, but still a life-changing event to get that virus, if not a life-ending event. Having said that, where does COVID-19 lie? We have a lot of people that are just talking mortality rate. Yes, mortality rate's down. There's a lot of reasons for the mortality rate being down. People aren't going on ventilators as much. The younger population is now getting compromised with COVID-19, but they don't have immune compromise. We're not putting people in nursing homes. Many people are wearing masks, so that mortality rate is going to decrease. The thing that we want to talk about is the morbidity rate. The morbidity, meaning the disease state. Now, talking about the disease state really speaks to the idea of the central nervous system and the central nervous system compromise and those examples that I just gave. Where does COVID-19 lie in that little example of a virus scale? Well, we're still not really sure because it's only been around for give or take 6 months. Obviously December 19, etc., but really in the States for 6 months or less. So we really have to ascertain where we want to place it. Let me illuminate you with some of the information, and then let's come to a working conclusion, if you will. So we know now that COVID-19 can damage the brain in 3 different stages. It, without question, wreaks havoc on the central nervous system. This was all published from Neurological, about neurological issues, COVID-19. This was in literature published from January 1st to May 1st, 2020. Again, it was that composite. Here's your 3-stage clarification, if you will. Stage 1. SARS-CoV binds to the ACE2 receptor. We've talked a lot about these ACE2 receptors. We know that they're prominent in the lungs, prominent in the gut, prominent in kidney, prominent in the parasites in the heart, most prominent, more of an abundance in fat cells. So they bind to the SARS-CoV to epithelial cells, mostly to start in stage 1, the nose and the mouth. This is when the cytokine storm has been described as low and controlled. Some of the symptoms you'll see, early symptoms once again, smell and taste. That's stage 1. Let's move on to stage 2. Stage 2 refers to the idea of a robust immune response. So obviously with a robust immune response, we're starting to get more elevation in that cytokine storm. It's activated by viruses leading to inflammation in blood clots that form in the lung. They may actually travel to the brain. So it may start in the lung, but it goes to the brain. Almost everything goes to the brain. Almost everything goes to the gut. So the gut-to-brain axis is always a player in virtually all health conditions. And everybody knows I love to talk about the gut to the brain and the brain to the gut. Having really stressed that, and I want to use a very simplistic word in the idea of stress, we all always have to go back and look to that. It affected the lung, but it went to the brain. Here's some of the symptomology: double vision, fatigue, post-stroke damage. Now there's a lot, you have hemiplegia, quadriplegia, different sides, different quadrants, different joints. Some people have a stroke and have almost no loss. My mom, I think, gives the best example of a stroke. I don't know much, Bob. My mom and dad are the only people who call me Bob. I don't know much, Bob, but I know the stroke originates in the brain, so it can't be good, and there's got to be some sort of damage to the brain. And she's right. It's a question of where it goes. That's stage 2. We're not even at stage 3. Stage 3, the virus crosses the blood-brain barrier and invades the brain. So let's define the blood-brain barrier for those who haven't been on my Facebook before. The blood-brain barrier is a single-layer epithelial cell that encapsulates and protects, encircles almost all of the brain. An example of something that isn't protected by the blood-brain barrier is the pituitary gland, because that pituitary gland has to have direct contact with blood at all times. It's the filter. It filters 400 miles of artery. Now, the instance where the blood-brain barrier can be compromised leads to a lot of deleterious effects. You can even call it leading to what we call neurodegeneration. The blood-brain barrier, which is made up of the same proteins as the gut barrier, a single-layer epithelial cell with the thickness of a wet paper towel, once you pass the blood-brain barrier, you're inside and you're at brain tissue, and that's why it can be so detrimental to your overall health. The cytokine storm now is defined as so severe, it's causing an explosive inflammatory response. Think of the way, when I think of an explosive inflammatory response, I think of the oil well going boom, 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 and that's all your cytokines. So hopefully that, and what I'm doing is making it evocative enough for you to understand that you're on fire. And that's what inflammation means, you're on fire. The symptoms are seizures, confusion, loss of consciousness, and in some rare instances now, death. So you have different phases, different stages, different classifications, yet one, the takeaway is that we know that the central nervous system is implicated. 2, that there's neurological deficit in 50% of the people that were studied. That's a lot, and I think there's going to be more. So this COVID-19 respiratory disease, if you will, first it started as a virus. Is it the flu? Then it started as a respiratory disease. Now we know the gut's involved. Now we know the brain's involved. And now we know it's not just a flu, but it's pretty detrimental. So we try to avoid it if we can. Even as a chiropractor, I do everything I can. And speaking to that, the head of the study talked about this, and I quote, this is from Dr. Majid Fuchai, MD, PhD. I hope I didn't butcher his name. If I did, all apologies with all due respect. He said, the good news is that the neurological manifestations of COVID-19 are treatable and can improve with intense training. He suggested, and everybody check this out if you will, my little vernacular from the Bronx, check this out, lifestyle changes including healthy diet, a good diet. We could talk about that. Everybody knows the kind of diet I like. No gluten, no dairy, decreases sugar. Let's improve our body composition. Regular physical activity. Let's get exercising. Let's get moving. Stress reduction. Let's not freak out about it. It's here. Let's deal with it. Let's get rid of it. Let's overcome. We're Americans. It's not the first time we've been hit with a pandemic. It's not the first time that we've had to face a revolver. And every time we've ever had to before, we've come out ahead and flourished afterwards. I see no reason why this can't be different as long as we all get on the same page. Done with my soapbox. Improve sleep. Can't emphasize sleep enough. I'm getting the point. Everybody in here, we have some people here pointing. They are wearing a mask. They're pointing at me when I said increase sleep because I too should sleep more. Sleep is a chance to reset your immune system. I'll put you on a path to immunorejuvenation. Put you on a path to protect your brain. Let your brain detox of all its waste products. You sleep, your body is more resolute to specific attacks, pathogens, and the like. Biofeedback. Great choice, retraining your brain with biofeedback. Brain rehabilitation. When was the last time anybody did a crossword puzzle? When was anybody practiced their new second, third, fourth, whatever language? When did somebody learn something new? Turn the news off. I get it. You want to see the numbers. You want to see somebody's opinion. Read an article. It's even better. So rehab your brain. Work with it. I remember one day staying home from school with my mom, and I was watching Hollywood Squares. I know it's a strange segue. And Joan Rivers, everybody knows who Joan Rivers is, certainly from New York. Joan Rivers, they said, and she always wanted to say something comically pithy. And they said to her, when do you think people's brains age? Now the answer was 40. She looked and said, for the only time I ever saw her serious, the day you stop learning every day. And boy, at a 9-year-old kid who was staying home from school, I'll never forget that, brain rehab. So all this information was published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, volume 76, pages 3 through 19, June 30th, 2020. It just came across my desk yesterday. I wanted to share it with you. I hope these takeaways were helpful. Again, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Like this, give me a comment, share it so your friends, your family, everybody sees it. Communicate with me. Let me know how you're feeling. I understand many people are at work. It's a Friday. The weekend started early. So you may see it not live like now. You may see it later Memorex. We're seeing a lot more, if you will, Memorex taped than we are live. That's great. Don't be afraid to share it. There's no sales pitch in here. It's all about information. I want to bring the value of the leading edge information. Did we have any shout outs, any calls? It's Friday afternoon. Not a problem. Just remember, like, click, share. Follow us on LinkedIn. It's all Dr. Robert Silverman. Follow us on Instagram. Everybody have a stellar, healthy, enjoyable weekend. Dr. Rob, always yours in health.